First of all, thank you, Umayma, so much for this initiative, for reaching out and for inviting me to speak on your platform this evening. And Fatma, really nice to meet you both. And it's so cool to know that you met on a competition that's related to trying to tackle the SDGs. That gives me a lot of hope that your generation is probably going to do a lot better than my generation and the one before me, taking care of this planet and doing things a little bit more sustainably. So my name is Shada El-Sharif. I wear quite a few hats. So first and foremost, I'm a mom to two awesome kids, but I also am, my background, so I did 15 years ago, I did my undergraduate master's in environmental engineering, and I have been working in the sector of environmental sustainability, climate change, consulting, and advisory for the last 15 years. I'm currently based in Amman, Jordan, but I've actually worked all over the MENA region. I have not been able to come to Bahrain yet, but I have been able to work in neighboring countries like Oman, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, but I've also, been exposed to what's been going on in terms of sustainability in Lebanon, Jordan, Tunisia, Egypt. So I'd be more than happy to share both my experience from Jordan, but also in the wider MENA region. Oh, and one more thing to share about myself is, I felt that even though I, in my personal life, I talk a lot about the things that I care about. So, for example, a country like Jordan moving towards a greener economy, I felt that it wasn't enough for me to be speaking on these issues on just professional platforms for like-minded people, which is why I'm, feel grateful that we have platforms like Instagram, like Zoom, where we can spread the message more widely. And so that's why I wanted through Instagram to also establish platform Sustain MENA. And so that's a place for anyone, anywhere in the world, but it has a particular focus on the MENA region to share success stories, to share people whom I like to call our green heroes. Because a lot of time from our region, we're hearing very upsetting news about wars and conflicts. And, it's always not a very encouraging image, right? So what I've seen that we've been doing a lot of really great things. In this region, we are leading on renewable energy, on electric vehicles, on smart agriculture. So I wanted to celebrate these things and promote them so that hopefully this become the norm rather than the exception. So not to bore you a lot with my CV, but I've worked within the government. I've worked as a director of the environmental fund at the ministry, but I also worked leading national programs with international partners like USAID, the World Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction Development. And I can tell you more about that, and the UNDP and others, and also worked within the private sector doing sustainability consulting and climate consulting. So the reason I tell you guys all of this is because it really takes the public sector, private sector, all kinds of organizations to push a sustainability agenda, whether it be on a country level or on an international or regional level. So that's enough about me, but I'm really excited to hear your questions so we can engage you and your viewers on topics that might be interesting to you.
So I think we want to start from the very beginning. What got you passionate about, sustainability? What really made you think about, how important this is and why you should be playing a role?
Well, to be honest, you guys, I always felt that, no matter what work you do in life, it really had to matter, right? It had to have a bigger impact than just like going to the office, getting a salary at the end of the month. So what am I actually contributing to my society, to my country, and to my world, right? So I feel very privileged that my parents really invested in my and my siblings' education. We had the opportunity to study in different countries. So I grew up in Jordan, but I had the chance to do my studies in the US. And, just getting exposed to all these different ideas, sort of the latest, science related to environmental planning and policies. And then the question was, okay, Shada, you've got these really cool degrees. What are you going to do with them? So that's why, when I came back to Jordan, Jordan has many environmental challenges. I don't know how much you know about Jordan, but people like to say, I don't find it very inspiring, but it's unfortunately true. Jordan is the second most water scarce country in the world. And that's a scary thing to hear, right? Like if you're from Jordan, you were like, okay, how can I help? How can I contribute to this issue? So things like that gave me sort of the driver, Umayma, to really want to be part of the solutions, right? To address these issues. With time, I started learning that our issues are not just about water. Water is a big one, but also energy is an issue. Countries like Jordan are not fortunate, maybe like Bahrain or countries of the Gulf, to have a lot of indigenous fuel resources, right? So we had to be a bit more resilient. How can we, make use of things like renewable energy to really be more So all these things for me provide so many exciting challenges to be a part of. And, with time throughout my career, I started getting involved at different levels. So at first it would be like, okay, get involved in a particular project. For example, we had this historic village in one of the southern mountains in Jordan, and how are we going to do a wastewater treatment plant in that village that would be sustainable and that would run on low energy, and that was a very exciting challenge. So, and then after that, we started getting more into renewable energy projects. Jordan now has like over 2,000 megawatts of renewable energy, like solar panels and wind turbines. Maybe we don't hear enough about these cool things, but it's happening. We have like 20,000 electric cars in our roads. We have the most energy efficient wastewater treatment plant in the region, Samra treatment plant. We're able to take our trash and turn it into methane. So it's actually this country has become this, like, let's say a center for innovation in these different types of clean technology. So where do I come in? So someone like me can either help on a project level, on a policy level, right? Because a lot of these things happen when the government and policies are favorable for them to happen. Okay, just to give you an example, renewable energy took off in Jordan because we had good renewable energy laws. I was fortunate to be involved in the laws around electric vehicles, and that helped us get more of these kinds of vehicles on the ground. So project level, policy level. And one thing I really love to do, and I've been doing in my career, is sort of partnerships, right? So a lot of these things don't happen unless you find the right partners and you do something bigger and better together. So I'll leave it at that, you guys, but happy to take on more questions.
I think I just want to say something when you said, when you mentioned about partnerships. I remembered during the same competition we talked about, me and Fatma earlier, where we met each other. I actually said this during my pitch. I said we're not going to be able to make change unless we all take part in it, or at least feel like we're all going to be able to contribute to that change.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important to mention. I think for everybody to know that you have, equal importance to actually do something. And especially if you're faced with a problem, there's always a chance to innovate. There's always a chance to come up with solutions. But how do we know if those solutions are going to work if we're not actually going to work on it together and, with all our support and actually be on the same page? So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for saying that.
No, absolutely, Umayma. And if I can share with you guys a story that happened with me just today. I started off my day with a talk to some grade 5 students, at an all-girls school here in Amman. And they asked me to come speak about natural resources. And this really bright young girl, she's like, Ms. Shada, do you think a lot of these changes you're talking about are not happening because people just don't communicate? I'm like, yes, absolutely, because we have these technologies, right? I don't think the world is missing good technology, right? Yeah. But then what her statement made me feel like, okay, technology, you need to add 2 C's to them, right? Communication, cooperation. So those 2 things, when you overlay them on top of good technology, that's when really you can make something happen at a bigger impact and a bigger scale. Because one company, one entity, one professor sitting in a university can't do it alone. One industry person who's like, oh, I have this awesome technology, can't do it alone. You need the government guy, the technology guy, the scientist. You need the youth, because you guys are going to be innovating, right? We're not going to stop at the technology we have today. You're going to keep making it better and better. So that's absolutely key. Partnerships and collaboration, definitely.
Definitely. Fatma, do you want to go ahead with your question next?
Yeah. So like you said in the beginning when you were talking about your CV, could you please talk about your experience when you were the director of the Jordan Environment Fund? It was like?
Yes, absolutely. When I took up that role, it was a surprise for me because, we go do our degrees abroad, we come back to our countries and, we want these, high paying jobs in the private sector or with international organizations. And it's not typical for someone with my experience to say, oh, you know what, maybe I should go into the public sector. We unfortunately in the Arab world sometimes associate public sector with things that are slow and bureaucratic and not very exciting. But at the same time, I felt that that's where change needed to happen, right? If you want something to get better, you try and actually find the hardest problem, the place where the biggest challenge is, and you tackle it right there. So I felt it was a big honor for me to be able to play a role in my country's government. The environmental fund was housed at the Ministry of Environment. A really cool mandate, to basically support projects on the ground. So, the kinds of entities we were supporting would be like a little NGO, in the north of Jordan that wanted to implement a recycling program, or a public institution that wanted to do a tree planting campaign using treated wastewater, or developing of game apps, for kids to raise their awareness on environmental issues. But what I wanted to do at that fund, Fatima, was to make it a bit more strategic, because the laws for that fund were written back in 2009. So when I came in around 2018-19, we kind of needed to update the laws and regulations of that fund to make it more relevant to today. So what's important to us today? Climate change is a big issue, circular economy, sustainable consumption production, involving youth, women, the vulnerable, NGOs, municipalities, all of these really critical elements. I worked with our partners and stakeholders in Jordan to develop new regulations for this fund. And we were able to issue a new bylaw in 2019 that included all these new priorities, but also new ways of support, because the world is becoming a bit more sophisticated, right? It's not just about giving an NGO a grant here or there, but you can actually work with other financial instruments. And you can also think about not just giving money, but also technical assistance, building skills, skills like writing a good environmental project. A lot of our local entities are lacking in those kind of skills. So just to give you an example, so it was a deep honor. And we developed these ideas by convening NGOs in Jordan, seeing what was important to them, what they needed, but also like members of the private sector and others in the public sector. So talking to even other ministries of waste, transport, and things like that. So it was a really exciting experience. And it gave me a better understanding of, if you take your time to understand how the laws of a country work, you can actually make change on them, right, to the better. But you need to be a bit patient and you need to work with people. So that was, I think, my big takeaway from that experience.
Yeah, I feel like it was really necessary, of course, because in 2009 and now people are way more aware about sustainability and what they can do. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
And I would just add one more thing, that it opened my eyes to a big opportunity, which is known as green funding. This is something that's come on due to the Paris Agreement, where lots of countries have committed billions of dollars to support other countries in adapting to climate change and building a greener economy. So the fund was trying to say, okay, how can we attract some of these funds to Jordan? As I mentioned to you guys, we have lots of environmental challenges. So instead of taking loans from these big banks, or instead of putting more pressure on our government, we can bring in, investments and green funds to really lift up other sectors. This is, for me, I saw how the environment can be there to lift every other sector in the economy, be it energy, water, transport, or agriculture. Yeah.
Okay. I think Umayma has another question.
Sure, shoot.
Okay, so I think you've been a mentor also for some time, I guess, and we've actually been in touch with some of your students, and they've told us amazing things about you. And
wow, you guys have done some investigative reporting. Very impressive.
And I think you've also worked with a lot of youth. What is something that you've got to know while working on?
What I've gotten to know is that this generation really has better understanding of the challenges that the world is facing today, because you guys are sort of a generation that's so exposed. Information is at your fingertips. You are saturated with information about, SDGs, climate change, and I think it really moves you. I think this generation really understands urgency and sees that it can play a role. I mean, in your choices, right, where you buy things from, you care about sustainable fashion, you care about healthy food, about social equity, about cyberbullying. So, I've never seen a generation that's so plugged in, right? But at the same time, I think it's really healthy and important for generations to work together, right? Sometimes people from my generation are afraid to work with Generation Z or X or Y or whatever, because you guys you guys might find our ideas a bit too dated or old-fashioned or something. So I think it's really important to collaborate, because you've got the wisdom, you've got the experience, but then you guys also represent the innovation, the excitement, and this really, I would say, ethical, really strong sense of ethics that, you recognize we have serious issues in the world, and the 17 SDGs, I think, capture the key problems and the key solutions that we need to be working towards. So that's what I've learned. What I've also learned is that, we need to work with youth to help them transfer their ideas, so wherever they're there's a social or environmental issue, how can they be transferred into social enterprises, for example, into initiatives? You know, how do you channel this amazing energy that the youth have into creating impact, real impact, you know, through real initiatives or projects or innovations on the ground? And our region is an amazing playground, I would say, for all of these ideas too. You know, it's like a lab, it's like a learning lab of all of these great ideas to be implemented. And I've seen such amazing, inspiring examples of youth coming up with solutions to tackle waste, you know, through recycling apps here in Jordan, for example. In Lebanon, you know, they're working on organic waste. In Egypt, you know, things to do with ecotourism or innovations in wind energy or solar energy. So I think that the inspiration has been mutual, okay, between me and the people that I work with. And I always learn a lot from the different, you know, let's say entrepreneurs, innovators, and just people who are trying to get the message out. And so I feel like I have a responsibility to do my best to support. And I'm keen for your ideas, any suggestions that I can do that more effectively. Maybe Instagram pages are not enough. Maybe I need to do more conversations like this. So definitely open to improving for sure on that front.
Yeah, I think you're doing pretty good, honestly. Like, you've done so many things and your platform is really good, because considering most of the youth are on like platforms like Instagram, like you said. So having an Instagram platform really helps like get your message out, because anybody can see it. It's like one touch away due to technology. So
no, thanks Fatma for the feedback. But you know, I think it's an art, right? And it takes time, right, to create good content and edit and all of that. You said you were the one, kind of the communication person. So, you know, those are skills that I think people in my generation probably need to learn a little bit better. But anyway, thank you guys. Yeah.
I think I totally echo with you on that part where you said, you know, we need to connect the generations as one when we're working towards innovation, sustainability. That is something that we truly believe in as well in Youth Wave. It's not only about empowering youth, but kind of putting them at the forefront, but also letting them know that they have people they can rely on and have people that believe in them and will help them and will teach them, you know. And again, there really is no boundaries, I guess, to learning from each other. So that is something that is very important. And I'm so glad you said that.
Umayma, you know, I just want to also give a shout out to the mentors that I've had in my life. You know, I maybe, you know, at different stages of my life, there's always been someone that I was able to look up to, whether professionally, whether they're working in an area I'm interested in. I would just always encourage you guys, encourage everybody in that's kind of growing up and still learning, to not be afraid to reach out and ask, right? Like if there's someone doing something that you find interesting, you know, it's easier to find people now. You could just, you know, drop them a line, say, I'm interested in studying this or that, or, you know, not to feel like you have to go through life alone, not to be a bit proud to ask. You know, I think we should do our best to learn from those that came before us. So even though I'm a mentor, I feel like for some people, I too still seek out mentors, you know, people who still inspire me in their work, their career, the way they communicate, their leadership skills. It's a never ending process. You know, I don't feel like I have all the knowledge and, you know, I'm a mentor only, but I also need mentors. So I think that's kind of a lifelong thing. It's like a mentality that you have that takes you through your different stages of life.
Absolutely. And I think we want to be able to give a chance to the audience that we have here.
Sure.
So let me just ask them very quickly. Do you guys have any questions for Ms. Shada? You can leave them in the chat box, or you can also turn your mics on to ask.
Okay, when you were younger, you know how everyone had a dream job that they wanted to be when they were younger? Did you ever envision yourself doing this, or did you have a different plan?
No, I always thought I was going to be a pediatrician, like a child doctor. Yeah, I always felt that that's what I was going to be. So never have I thought that, you know, I'd be doing environmental advocacy or sustainability. But my advice is just to be open, and, you know, you get these opportunities that open up in front of you. So you just kind of need to see them and seize them, right? Seize the opportunities that come your way, because as much as you try and plan really far into the future, you really don't know what your path is going to look like. So just have the right values, you know, have your heart in the right place, and you'll just end up doing really cool things.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good luck.
Great response.
So the person saying bravo, I will reveal, is actually my husband. He's the awesome innovation guru, Dr. Muhammad, who's speaking in the chat. So if you ever, Umayma, wanted to talk to somebody on innovation in MENA, Mohammed is your guy.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. While they're coming in, can I please ask you a question? So, you have some very honorable positions, and I just wanted to ask, what fueled your passion? Because like now it's very common to talk about sustainability and do all of these projects, but I feel like it wasn't as common maybe 15 years ago when you were studying it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, as I told you, Fatima, beginning, I actually, before I went into the environmental field, I thought I was going to be a doctor. So I was pre-med and I was like getting ready to do med school and all of that. For different life reasons, I ended up going down the, my plan B in life, right? Which was I studied environmental engineering. I'm like, okay, if medicine doesn't work, I'll do this environmental consulting stuff. And I'm really glad that happened because while being a doctor, sometimes, you can have impact and save a single person's life. I think when you work in the environmental sector and maybe you do something that's more on a national level or a regional level, you can impact, a much broader segment of the population. For example, if you work with government and you manage to introduce something related to clean energy, imagine the kind of impact that can have on the country's economy, on the air quality for people. So this field has the potential to really have massive impact. And if you feel you can contribute even a little bit to something like that, you come home at night and you tell really good stories and inspiring stories to your children. When my kids ask me, Mama, what do you do all day? What's your work? You can be proud of the kind of things that you're doing. So I've always been driven by impact, Fatima, and it's never a dull day when you're working in sustainability because you can be working on so many different types of projects in all sectors. So I've worked with clients in the banking sector or telecommunication. So you learn a lot about different sectors. It's a very cross-cutting field. So if you're someone who's comfortable with this kind of complex, interconnected, constantly changing field, then sustainability is for you. But not everybody has to do it the way I did it. I'm kind of like that. I like that bird's eye view. I like connecting different sectors together. It doesn't scare me. Some people like to specialize, like, oh, no, I want to be really specialized in, electric mobility or in a certain kind of clean energy. And that's fine too. So people whom I advise and talk to, we have a discussion. I say, okay, you try your first job, take on different assignments, try to see where your heart feels most comfortable, where you're having impact, and build your career accordingly. So even after my degree, I did lots of different certificates. I did certificates on energy management, on green building. And, these things helped open my eyes to new sectors because sustainability is really broad. And then you can sort of specialize in different areas. Today, I'm working a lot on things like climate finance, as I mentioned to you, and green economic transition. Those have been my focus for the past, I would say, year or so.
Yeah, I completely agree, honestly. Like, considering we're not very sustainable as a region, especially because we've been developing so quickly. Like, I think our country, Bahrain, is considered like the 7th most polluted country in the world.
Oh my goodness.
So they're not very sustainable, as you can tell. And I just wanted to ask you, so what are some of the things that motivate you, especially in times like Corona? Because I don't feel like people realize the importance of sustainability, especially at times like these.
It's funny that we don't see it. And I would say the opposite. I would say we must see the importance of sustainability at times like these, because we have to ask ourselves how we got ourselves into this mess in the first place. It was due to, unsustainable practices. Corona and SARS and all those diseases are known as zoonotic diseases. They come from human beings kind of erasing those natural boundaries between humans and the natural world. How do we do that? By cutting trees, by replacing natural ecosystems for grazing, by illegal trade of animals and plants. All those things created these viruses that came back to hurt us as human beings. So how can we not believe in sustainability or think that our impact needs to be well studied and more sustainable? It's like we're living in denial. So in fact, the thing that Corona should do is actually wake us up that our previous, practices were not sustainable, and we need to respect again our relationship with nature. And also at the same time, when we say natural resources, not just with the natural world, but obviously how are we using our water, our energy, the kind of waste we generate, the water we drink, its cleanliness is all dependent on our practices with waste, for example, or how we deal with plastic. We can't expect clean water if we don't do the other side of it, right? There's going to come a time when we go into a supermarket and we can't find a reasonably priced bottle of water. Not that I'm advocating for bottles of water. We should avoid buying bottles of water from the supermarket. You guys should have your reusable, water bottles. But, the things we take for granted today, and, we took for granted our health last year. Did anybody think we would live in a world like we're living today last year? We all took for granted, right?
Yeah.
We need to be smart. We need to learn from our mistakes And the message from planet Earth is clear. Human beings, you're on an unsustainable trajectory. You must change course.
Michelle, again, you've said some amazing things, and that should be really our focus.
So as one of your goals is to create an impact locally and in our region for people to be more sustainable and more eco-friendly, what initiatives do you think people should start? Like, I'm sure you talked about the many NGOs in Jordan, but in other regions, like, what would your advice be for the youth?
I think youth should feel that they have a role in policy as well. Sometimes youth think that, the only thing I can do is organize something for my school or for my street, but youth have a bigger power than that. And, you've seen youth in other parts of the world, just one example that people maybe keep using a lot, but I'll just use it. So like someone like Greta Thunberg, right? So, she's, done these, Fridays for the Future, just this little girl sitting outside of her country's government saying, we demand better response to climate change from our government. And then that movement now has millions of people. And, that started with one young girl, right? And I just like the youth to remember that they have a lot of power. And, even though a lot of them are innovative and they can do initiative on a small scale, they also have an opinion on policy and on what to expect from their governments. And so, my advice would be to get in part of those dialogues, because a lot of countries in the region now have these like vision documents. In Jordan, you have Vision 2025. In Oman, Vision 2040. In Bahrain, I don't know what the number is, but
I think 2030, maybe.
Yeah, and in each one of those visions, there's always something about, engaging with the youth, working with the youth, so, okay, you guys are that generation and you need to read these documents, develop an opinion and say, what, we want to have a session with like, the ministries here and give our inputs to that, right? So like that engagement that if we're going to fix the future, separate initiatives here and there are good, but we also need the entire country to work on the same wavelength. And you can only do that, like we were talking before, through dialogue, cooperation, partnerships. And it would be great if that kind of regular dialogue happened in a more systematic way. It's not like just, once a year, we meet these ministers, we take a picture and that's it. No, it needs to really be part of how we plan and how we implement, projects in the region. So first, I would say, the youth need to increase their knowledge about these issues, feel that they have a role, be proactive, and use the tools that they have to raise their voice, right? And raise their ideas, be it social media or writing or music or art or whatever it is. And then think about how you plan your career. You don't have to plan your career in the very traditional way. I'm just going to be an engineer or a doctor, but how can I make sure that whatever I do, I have impact and I'm communicating and I'm collaborating, right? Yeah. So just get out of that sort of, it's just me against the world mentality. Think about what's my impact for the world.
Of course. I think because the meeting ended, there's no more chat. So, Umama, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think that part was also equally important to mention. And, for the youth especially, they need, first of all, to know about what's going on. And like you said, Michelle, to be proactive and also to catch on these opportunities that they have. And I think our region is especially focused on, providing the youth with opportunities to work innovatively with a sustainable goal. And, that's something that really needed to be mentioned. Yeah. And I guess maybe we could end on this because I guess we're taking a bit of your time. So I think my last question for you would be, what are some of the challenges you see in the field of innovation or sustainability?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I want to just say quickly something on the previous question is that I don't think the responsibility should fall obviously only on the youth, right? I think that from my perspective and through my own work, I try very much to engage government and make them also proactive in reaching out to all segments of society, right? How is this policy going to affect women? How is it going to affect vulnerable people? How is it going to affect refugees? A country like Jordan, we have 20% of our population as refugees. So just to be a bit more sensitive, we call it being socially inclusive, right? So Jordan actually has a green growth plan. And the green growth plan is all about economic development that's socially inclusive and environmentally sustainable. And my wish and my hope is for all countries of the Arab world to have that kind of a vision and that kind of a plan. Vision, all these long-term visions are great, but I think they need to go through an environmental lens and also a social lens, which obviously includes the youth. So for me, what is the challenge I see is really to shift that mindset on the policy level, on the governmental level of all countries in this region, for us to say, we need to cooperate on this agenda, because our resources are linked, right? There's something that we love to talk about in sustainability. We call it the water, energy, food nexus, right? Countries of this region are always trading energy or food or water. These are going to become more and more very scarce resources. So that needs a lot of cooperation and coordination. So I want to see more unification of action in this region, on the governmental level, youth. I love that you guys are not looking at Bahrain only. You're trying to link with youth in other parts of the Arab world, right? So those kind of cross-country collaborations, I think that's another challenge, but an opportunity. Because in my dictionary, every challenge is an opportunity for improvement. Nothing is like, oh, okay, it's a challenge, so that we're not going to do anything about it. A challenge is a call for action. So for me, those challenges are really what we should be focusing on now. The world is talking about building back better after COVID. And what does that mean? The world is kind of on a pause button right now. Okay, we're going to go back to normal. Do we want to go back to the old normal, or do we want to create a new reality that's more, sensitive to biodiversity, climate change, energy efficiency, water efficiency, collaboration, social inclusivity? That's the agenda, that's the dream, and it's not like, we're just take the SDGs as they are and apply them to our culture and our, region. It's actually something that we can link to our own priorities and our own vision, right? So for us to localize these really cool concepts like the SDGs and add to it our innovation. So yeah, I guess I'll stop at that. All our challenges can be turned into innovative opportunities.
Well, yeah, I completely agree. Like, I'm really glad a lot of changes happening right now. Like, I think Abu Dhabi had their first nuclear power station, and I mean, that's not the best energy resource, of course, because it's dangerous, but I'm really glad that there's lots of change happening, and you're completely right when it comes to that.
Thank you, Fatima. Yeah, and we should all learn from the examples. Like you said, a project, we need to weigh it on all of its pros and cons, and as a society, be able to learn from whatever project there is. Nothing's perfect, but at least we have a commitment to improve our performance, right?
So Mama's going to finish us off.
Thank you so much, Shada, for joining us today. And we've had a wonderful discussion, and we've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it, and I hope you did too.
I really enjoyed speaking with you guys, and always inspired by your questions that make me think and see things in a different way. So keep doing the great things you're doing.
Yeah, and you keep doing the great things you're doing. You're making a huge impact.
Thank you, ladies. You're very sweet. And good luck with those A-levels. You got them.
Thank you.
And good luck with saving the environment.
You're going to help us, okay? We're counting on you. We can't do it without you guys.
Definitely.
Awesome.
We'll do our best as well.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Youth Wave Mina. All the best.
Thank you so much.